Hi, welcome back to Life with Lou. Today I wanted to share some of our thoughts around booking a trip to Disney and Orlando. So, if you have decided that you don't care that you're an adult and you're just going to go and have the best holiday of your life, then this video might be for you. So, to explain a little bit, I am a massive fan of Disney. And I had been regularly as a child and had the good fortune to go 4 times. And then I left it for over 20 years before I got to go again. And then in 2023, I went with a good friend of mine back out to Disney World for the first time and just had the most incredible trip. Since then, I've had the really good fortune of going back this year, and that was partly due to the fact that I was speaking at a conference out in Orlando and I had some time and fortuitously was able to do both. And understandably, my partner Tom was a bit disappointed, and I was like, that's okay, because we're going to go together in 2025. So stick around if you want some top tips from my perspective of things to think about when you're booking a trip to Disney and Orlando. Some of the stuff I cover off will be very Disney centric. Other things that I'm recommending are around Orlando and Universal Studios in general. But let's get to it, shall we? So, tip number 1 is book early, but wait for a deal. Now, this year, everyone got super excited because in May, they announced that they were bringing back the free dining plan for guests in 2025. What does this mean at Disney? Well, effectively, it means a free quick service meal plan without you having to pay. So this is effectively paying for the cost of your food for the entire time that you are in Disney World. And effectively you get 2 quick service meals and a series of snacks a day. And this for us was an absolute game changer. You also get your free refillable mug if you're staying in the Disney hotel. And the premise was you needed to be staying in a Disney hotel and you had to be there for 5 days or more. Well, we couldn't have been more excited by this news because it immediately took my very complicated and big budget from a much larger amount to a much smaller amount. And that's because food in Disney and in the US in general is expensive. Now, when I went as a kid, that wasn't the case. Food was very cheap. But food in the US to eat out now has definitely increased. Food in the supermarkets is even more expensive, and food in a Disney theme park is even more expensive. So the opportunity to get this stuff for free was an absolute no-brainer for us. So we booked on the day that they launched the free dining plan for 2025. We'd done loads of research on which hotels were an option to us. And as much as we would have loved the budget to be able to go and stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge or the Polynesian or Wilderness Lodge, we just did not have the funds to do that. So we opted for a moderate resort and we're going to be staying at Port Orleans, which, if I'm honest, part of me is really, really melting at the thought of, because that was the last place I stayed with my mum and my dad when I was there as a kid. So it feels really nice to be going home, going back. And so we're going to be staying in Port Orleans, and we booked in a time period where there was a discount on our overall holiday of £300, and we got the free dining plan. So immediately that made a huge difference to the money that we were going to be spending on the trip. So look out for a free dining plan offer, and look out for when there are offers in general discounting your holiday. And we booked through Disney World UK. The second thing I would say is that when you're thinking about booking your flights, is remember the times of year where there are flight sales. And British Airways typically does a flight sale in January and also in May. And we were really, really lucky to be able to also get our economy flights with British Airways on a special deal, which took the number down significantly. Now, again, we would have preferred probably to do premium economy, but in reality, the cost of those flights was so significantly cheaper that we just thought we had to go with it. And so it's worth remembering, if you're trying to do Disney on a budget, remember about airline sales and look out for them, sign up for the notifications, because again, that will make a really big difference to the cost of your holiday. The third thing is, don't tie yourself into when there is an offer, but really think about the impact it has on the cost. So you'll find things like free dining plans are for a set period of time, for a set period of days and a set period of, or a set option of hotels. And whilst I wouldn't yield to that completely, if you have some really specific views about the time of year you want to go, it can make a significant difference to the cost of your holiday. And so for us, we're going in the early part of next year, and we'll kind of talk about why we believe that to be a benefit as well. But effectively, we'll be there from late February into March. Another really interesting one to note is my boyfriend Tom has a VPN on his laptop, and I had looked at an offer on the Universal Studios app for booking tickets and hotels that got you over 30% off. And then when I went to the UK website, that offer was not available at all. But miraculously, we could get it on Tom's laptop because of his VPN hiding his location. And so when it came to booking our Universal Studios part of our trip, we managed to upgrade our hotel and save ourselves a significant amount of money with this 35% deal, where we got a free upgrade and we also got 35% off our Universal passes. So an interesting tip is, if you are connected to a VPN, have an exploration of whether it gives you different deals on the holiday. And it's all gone through fine. We've also booked our transport with them, and it saved us hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So I would say be as savvy as you can when you're looking for your trip. And if you have the ability to use a VPN, it might make a real difference to the offers you see. My next recommendation is, when you're thinking about the length of your trip, don't try and cram too much in to those days. And I speak with experience of doing this as a kid, but also for the last 2 years running. Your legs and your feet will get tired and you will need downtime. And what you do not want to do is take the joy out of Disney. The amount of people I see arguing in theme parks, hot, bothered, tired, because they haven't really thought about making sure they've got that downtime, is huge. And so my recommendation is, be kind to yourself. Know yourself well enough. Take lots of breaks, but when you're actually planning your trip, make sure you bake in some days that are just for downtime. And so for us, that's meant, because this is the first time that Tom has ever been to Orlando, that we're going to go for over 2 weeks. And that's partly because we want to do Universal, we want to do Kennedy Space Center, and we want to do Disney. And it's also partly because I don't want to rush around. When somebody has never been to Disney before or Universal, you want to be able to have the time to really take it in and not feel like you're rushing around. So make sure you give yourself downtime, and make sure that you have some days that are just going to be for by the pool, reading a book and chilling out. So make sure you plan in some rest days when you're thinking about the length of your trip. So one of the things that people often ask me about is when to go. And when I've kind of advised other friends on when to look at going, there are 2 things that come into my mind. One is the temperature, and 2 is the level of busyness. And there is a brilliant book by Adam Hatton, and if you're following this because you're a Disney fan, You probably already know of him. And I have followed Adam and Disney in Detail and Brogan and Tate for a number of years because they really are Disney lovers and they've got a wealth of information on their channels. And his book is a really good guide to understand times of year where it gets extremely busy in the parks and also the temperature, and it's something to consider. But that February-March spot for me is a sweet spot. And I've been to Disney twice in the last 2 years in that time period. So why is it a sweet spot? Well, first and foremost, you're not in a heavy rain season. So it's not that you won't see rain. It's Florida. Of course you're going to see rain, but it's not torrential all of the time, and you can have quite dry runs of weather in that period. The second thing is that the temperature is significantly less and the humidity is less. I do not know how as a kid, my mum and I talk about this all the time now, how we went in like school holiday August time. And I know for many of you, that is the time of year you'll be going. And if you're going in that time of year, that's great. Take a fan, make sure that you've got a change of clothes, make sure you have plenty of water with you and downtime. And we can talk about all the top tips that I would have for the parks as well. Just not in this vlog. But actually going in that February-March time is very pleasant weather-wise. You're likely still to be in a t-shirt, but you might need a sweatshirt or a light jacket in the evenings. You're likely to be comfortable enough to walk around in the day without getting too hot, and you should see less rainfall. So from a weather and temperature perspective, February-March time is a really nice time to go. The other reason I love it is if you're a big fan of Epcot, is you're likely to see either the Festival of Arts or the Garden Festival during that period of time. And so it's a really pretty time to be in the parks. And both of those festivals, I've experienced both, are really, really lovely to walk around and enjoy all the food stalls, etc. So that's another pull for me. And finally, it's just that it's significantly quieter. And I found that going at that time of year, if you have the ability and the choice to, and I know that isn't the case for everyone, but if you have the choice to be able to go at that time of year, you are going to see the parks significantly quieter. And that makes a big difference to the amount that you can fit into your trip, the amount of rides you can do in a day, and the overall kind of stress level of being in a super busy park as opposed to being in one that's got high volumes of people but doesn't feel overwhelming. So that's another reason for me that I like to go at that time of year. Now, what I would say is that you have to expect, if you go at that time of year, that there might be rides that are down for maintenance, because typically they do that in the late January through to early spring period of time, because it's when the parks are at their quietest. So it makes total sense that that's when they might do some ride maintenance. Typically, they announce this months in advance. So if you're concerned that one of your favourite rides might not be operating, or something that you've kind of ring-fenced and gone, yes, I definitely want to do that ride, it might be worth checking before you go to ensure that that ride isn't down for maintenance. A great example of this would be that they've recently had Splash Mountain closed because they're completely renovating it to a Princess and the Frog themed ride, which I'm super excited about because that is literally one of my favourite films. And I love Splash Mountain, but I also love the Princess and the Frog film. And so that ride has been closed for a large period of time. There are also rumours that they're going to close Spaceship Earth, and we'll never hear the lofty voice of Judi Dench ever again. But again, that hasn't been confirmed as definitely closing since COVID. It was due to close before COVID, and then it didn't close. So we might still have that one for a while. But the reality of it is you have to accept the fact that not everything is going to be open while you're there, particularly if you're in that early part of the year. My next recommendation is about downloading the Disney app. Now, I've downloaded both the Universal and the Disney app ahead of time, and I know I'm months away from going, but I love that Disney app. And sometimes I like to just look and see how busy the parks are and how long the waits are for my favourite rides. But also it's really good to get familiar with the app ahead of you going on this trip, because that app does a wealth of things. It can open your door, you can do remote check-in through it, you can shop through it, you can pre-order food through it, and understanding how all of that works before you go on your trip is going to put you in a really good advantage spot. And I might do a walkthrough video of the app and kind of talk through how you maximize the use. But I found that app to be so incredibly important to my trip. If you want to pre-book rides, if you want to pre-book restaurants, if you want to pre-order food for collection, if you want to manage your day and get top tips of what's going on and also see wait times on things, that app is going to become key to you. So best believe you're definitely going to need a charger in your rucksack, in your day pack for the parks, because you're going to be on your phone a lot. But getting used to the navigation of that app and what's in it ahead of going on your trip is highly recommended, because there is a lot going on in it, and also there are a lot of buzzwords, and I'm not going to cover them off today, but lightning lanes and Genie Plus, and Genie Plus is now going and it's going to be just lightning lanes, and understanding all that language and what it means is quite important. I think the app really helps you to do that, so would recommend downloading the app. I have also downloaded the Universal app, and that seems to have a lot less that you can do in it, but I thought it would be a good thing just to have, and I will start to get used to what's in there and what I can do with it over the coming months. But worth noting, that is where I saw the offer for 35% off that I then tried to book via the app, and it wouldn't let me do it because I was in the UK, and hence the reason that we then ended up doing that via Tom's laptop and the VPN. So download the apps. I might have said apps about 500 times there. Apologies if I did. One of the other things to think about is when you're thinking about your accommodation is really thinking about the perks. So I would say that whilst I know that the perks of early hours has been depleted over the years, it makes a huge difference still to your ability to pack a lot into your day. So in March this year, I stayed at the Art of Animation, and because it was February, March, it wasn't overly busy. My buses were amazing, and I was able to get to the parks and get early access, typically half an hour before they open. Now, there is a strong view out there. What can you do in half an hour? Well, the answer is quite a lot. And in my experience, whilst they open the gates to the park, they may open them an hour before, but then won't let you through to the next part of the park until 30 minutes before. But it's significantly speeded up your ability to get to rides. And a great example of this would be Animal Kingdom. I got to the park. The park was going to open for early access at 7:30, and I got to the park at 6:45. They actually let us in at 7 o'clock. And of course, most people are going to go for Flight of Passage. They walked us to that ride, and then literally on the dot of half an hour before, let us board it. Well, it was a complete walk on. I did it twice. And then I went and did Navi River Journey with no queue. And so I'd done 3 rides before that park was open to the public. And of course, by the time I came out of Navi River Journey, everyone was rushing to that ride. And we know that ride can have over 2-hour waits. So utilize that early hour access. I have said to my partner, Tom, he is going to have to accept the fact that we're getting up early on our holiday, because it makes such a difference to your ability to maximize the use of the days. So when you're thinking about booking your accommodation, whilst there is definitely cheaper accommodation out there, thinking of the value add of staying on property is really worth thinking about. And I would say that Disney hotels have incredible service. They are all well situated for the parks. The free bus service, in my experience, has been exemplary, but I have gone in quieter times of the year. I suspect if you're going at the height of the season, it may not be as easy to get buses and you might need to wait, but that has never been my experience to date. Also, you've got fun things to do, like you can use the boat to go to different places, and I'm super excited to stay at Port Orleans because we can get the boat to Disney Springs. So that is a huge advantage. And whilst I'd say that early access feels like nothing, 30 minutes, it makes a wild difference to your ability to do things at pace. And sometimes not. Like sometimes you just want to be in the park, in the calm. And I did this in Epcot while everyone was running for the Frozen ride. And it was absolute pandemonium. There were people running with pushchairs. There were children crying. There were people holding their kids on their shoulders and running. And I just went and got a coffee and sat by the lake and just had a moment of calm by myself before the madness ensued. And I think, you know, ironically then, about 45 minutes later, they were starting to let new people into the park, but that mad rush of Frozen had significantly slowed down. And I think I only waited 15 minutes. So sometimes it's just about getting you into the space so that you can enjoy it as well. It doesn't have to be that you're going on a ride. I think the next one is an interesting one. When you're starting to explore your trip, my top tip number 9 is you just can't do everything. You're going to wanna, but you just can't. And what I would do is I would typically prioritize my absolute must-dos. I'm going to sound like a complete project manager now. If you've ever followed Moscow, your must-haves, your could-haves, your should-haves, your won't-haves. What is the example of that for Disney? Well, I think, you know, work out what rides are an absolute must-have that you cannot leave Disney World until you know you've achieved those rides. Get them down on a list. Then there's your, I could do them and it would be nice to do them. And if I can do them, I will be happy. And then there's kind of your won't haves. And do you know what my won't have has been every time? And I'm determined to fix it on this next trip. Is the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I can never get on it. It's like, I don't know what is so amazing about that ride because I've never been on it. But the queues are insane and I'd love to fix that this time. I mean, I got to go on Tron. I've got to go on that loads of times. Can I get on the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train? No. So I'm going to try and fix that for this trip. But it is identifying just what are you prepared to wait for and what aren't you prepared to wait for. And I typically have a rule that in that early hours area of the day, I will do as many of my must-have rides as possible. But there are other golden moments during the day where you could also explore doing things. One is when the fireworks are on, naturally, the rides are a lot quieter, or one is just when it's at the end of the day and some of the large hordes of families have started to exit the park. And yeah, we can talk about that in more detail actually in our next Disney vlog. But I think, you know, just accept you're probably not going to be able to do absolutely everything on your list. And finally, my final top tip is where possible, pre-book your restaurants. And you can typically do this 60 days in advance of your trip. And that's specifically with Disney. And you can do that on the Disney app. What I would say though, is you can get really caught up in trying to book things ahead of time. And what you'll often find is on the day that you're in the park, sometimes people cancel their reservations and you can get into some really cool places. And I actually had that happen to me on my last day in Magic Kingdom on my trip in March, that I hadn't booked somewhere. It was impossible to book somewhere because it was spring break, but I just went up to the Plaza restaurant in Main Street, USA and said, I know you're super busy. I was in a queue for a seat, but it looks like it's just moving back further and further and further. And she was just amazing. She was like, is it just you? And I said, yes. And she said to me, give me 10 minutes. I think I can squeeze you in. So it's always worth asking. It's always worth checking the app on the day to see if there have been cancellations. And also accept the fact that you might book things 60 days in advance, and then when you get there, you're just not in the mood for it, or it's not at the right time because actually you think you've got a call back for a ride, or you might just have to be flexible. So have the fun of booking things and kind of get down on paper what you'd really like to do from a restaurant perspective, but also just be flexible to the fact you might be able to sort things when you're there as well. And typically really early mornings are good to look. So if you wake up early, definitely have a gander and see what you can see. So then my top 10 tips, that was quite hard to say, for Disney and Universal and Orlando in general when booking your trip. And if you are having an opportunity to go to Disney, put it in the comments box below. I love speaking to people that love Disney as much as I do, and I'm so glad to be reacquainted with it in my adulthood. And I'm kind of sad I've left it for so many years. And what I would say is that Disney is just as much for adults as it is for families. And I have done friend trips, I've done a solo trip, and now I'm going to go on a couples trip next year. But in each of those opportunities, it's been amazing. Even doing Disney on my own was an incredible experience. So if you're thinking about doing Disney and you're not sure that you should do it as an adult, or you're not sure you can do it alone, I absolutely promise you will have an amazing time. But I'm going to continue to share some of my top tips as we get ready to kind of go to Disney over next year, and share where we're up to, share the types of things that we're going to take on our trip, and of course we're going to vlog the trip as well, so you'll get that opportunity to see us on there. If you're interested in travel vlogs, we have a wealth of them on this channel, particularly around camper vanning and centre parks, so please take an opportunity to have a look at those. And if you found this helpful, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Have a brilliant day. Thanks so much. Bye.